Welcome to Inside Sports. I'm Nodley Wright. When the global pandemic hit our shores back in March 2020, sports took a halt. On February 5, 2021, Minister of Gender, Entertainment and Sport, the Honorable Olivia Babs-Grange, announced that the provision for resumption of sport had been included in the Disaster Risk Management Act. Since then, the green light has been given to a number of sporting disciplines such as track and field and swimming to commence hosting events, while the local Premier League is slated to begin on June 26, 2021. In this episode, however, we'll be looking at a series of friendlies between the Reggae Boys and the Japan on June 3. They'll also play Serbia on June 7, then the Japan Olympic team on Saturday, June 12. We go for a short break. When we return, we'll analyze the teams and our chances for success. Soon come back. Welcome back to Inside Sports. I'm Nodley Wright. With me in studio is Neo Oxford, Media Manager of Mount Pleasant Football Academy and Goalkeeper Coach of Kingston College, as well as Founder and CEO of Rainers Football Academy, which is Jamaica's first and only female football academy, as well as Machel Turner, who is a football analyst and sports management consultant. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Gentlemen, the Reggae Boys will be playing Japan on June 3, the Olympic team on June 12. We have seen the pool of players drafted to compete in this round. What are your thoughts on the players who have been assembled? I'll go with you first, Neo.
It's a good team. We've seen that the team has some potential. A bit inconsistent with our selection in recent friendlies that we've had. There are some players that we would have expected to be in the team that we're not seeing there, and some players that we expected not to be in the team who we do see there. Still puzzling as to how we have local-based players in a national team that with no football in the country recently, despite being a Mount Pleasant man and seeing Kevon Isaacs there. You also wonder how fit would he be? Luca Levy from Harbourview. How fit would he be? Jadine White from Cavalier. I think his last game would have been against America recently, but when last before that? So looking at the team, we do have players who have been playing well, and we have to mention Hector. He hasn't played for Fulham since January. How is he able to get called up to a national team? So there are some players who I think don't deserve to be there, but there are some that I think are worthy of the task.
Before we get to Machel, you spoke about inconsistencies in our selection. What are some of the inconsistencies you've seen?
Well, you'd have to look at it and wonder, there are certain players that we see in the team. Not to pick out anyone, but you question it. Where is this player? I mean, there are players who we selected in the last trip to Saudi Arabia. They're not in the team now. There are certain players who we selected for the USA game, played well, scored a goal, not in the team now.
Who are these players?
Look at Lowe.
Okay.
I know he said that they're personal reasons. We also look at the likes of.
You're talking about Damian Lowe or Jamal Lowe?
Jamal Lowe.
Jamal is involved in playoffs.
Well, yes, indeed, but. At what point will he be a serious player for the JFF? Many people question that we selected a lot of players for that USA game, but what happens, say we don't make the World Cup? When I say inconsistencies, I mean that why didn't we have these players from before? Why didn't we have them together as a bond, just as Taxi and Andre has a big bond there, despite they were in the MLS, so you could say that it was the American bond. But these are players that we should have seen before, had them around in the structure before, that even that they have called to the American game, they would have still known about the Jamaican concept of football before that. So you have Jamal, he played the last game, he's not there for this round of matches. When do we see him again? So will he come for the Gold Cup? He comes for the Gold Cup. What would have happened to him with that one gap that he has missed? He would have. I always hear Craig Butler mention about a structure of play for Jamaica.
We will come to.
So will he
to
miss,
that
will
in
he
a bit.
miss that now because he misses a game that many would say this will be the game for Whitmore to decide on his Gold Cup team. So he misses this game now.
But Neo, some would say based on what Jamal did against the US, he has penciled in a play, so he is not a worry. So it is now an opportunity for players such as Blair Turgott and others to show what they have. But while you stew on that, we go to Machel. Your thoughts on the squad?
I think it's a good mix. I know that, as Neil brought up, there's some question marks about players being unattached or not playing. But there's players who are at clubs and are not playing at their clubs who are in the squad that's been called. I think there are some players, for example, Alvas Powell, that you need to see where they are at this moment in time before you go forward. Because you're thinking, I think everybody will be thinking that Alvas should, under normal circumstances, would be a key player going forward. So someone like him, someone like Ravel Morrison, not at a club now. But I think we can all agree that Ravel Morrison is a different quality than most of the players that we have. And he displayed that against Saudi Arabia. So I have no issues with some of those players. Again, with the local players, yes, they'll be unfit. We're not certain how much time they will get on the field. Probably the game against the Olympic team will be a good chance for them to get a run out and get some minutes under their belt. But I wouldn't expect them to play a huge part against Japan or Serbia. So I think considering the games that we have, and that we have that one fixture which doesn't count for anything. It's good quality opposition, but it doesn't count for anything. That these players will get some opportunities to show something else.
Quickly, Machel. So do we treat the local-based players who aren't in action, do we treat them differently as opposed to how we would treat an Alvas Powell who gave up his contract and is now inactive, and a Ravel Morrison who doesn't have a contract but trains with Sheffield Wednesday? Do we treat them differently?
Yes,
why?
I would treat them differently because of their background and their what they've done. So they have more to stand on than a Luca Levy or a Kevon Isaacs in terms of where they've been, what they've seen, what they've experienced. In terms of Alvas Powell, what he's given to the national team before, I thought personally that 2019, before the pandemic, I thought 2019 was his best year in the national team jersey. So we have to see where he's at now, especially because right back is a spot where I don't see a clear right back right now.
Really?
So,
not Alvas?
well, considering his situation, he will have to work for that again. And then you have O'Neal Fisher, who's not playing at LA Galaxy. He's in the MLS, but he's not playing at LA Galaxy. And then you have Adrian Mariappa, who is somewhat...
He's long in the tooth, so he's basically
exactly
on the downside. All right. So let me ask you both this. What do you believe are the aims and objectives of these matches?
I would expect that it's to see exactly what was mentioned, that to get that team playing to see where players are at. But he also mentioned O'Neal Fisher. So he if you look at it, I was up to the point that, okay, the game with Japan would be to use players who want to see where they are at. Why not have these players in the squad that you know they aren't playing at the moment? Let's see how they look against quality opposition, a team going to the Olympics, and then judge them from there. George Lee is also a player not in the team, who we saw once.
Who?
Greg Lee. Greg Lee, he's injured at the moment, so that's
okay.
But what's the aim of the games?
I asked you.
It's puzzling to me, because you go and you play Serbia, good opposition, you go and play Japan, good opposition, but then you bring an under-23 team. Are we looking to say, okay, we might get beaten in these two games, let's go back?
The fact that it's an under-23 team doesn't mean it's a bad team,
exactly.
because Japan are playing, they're a good football country now, but just to share this with you, your good friend Michael Hector and Bobby Reed, they're pulled out of this squad, so I don't expect to see them go. So chances are Michael Hector will be replaced by Curtis Tilt, who had a limited run out against the US.
I like Tilt against the US game. I wanted to see a bit more of him. 6'3", big muscular player on the back, so I have some time for him.
Okay, and your thoughts?
The games, I think, would just be, again, getting players some game time together, and most importantly, putting in a system or building on what has already been put in place in terms of a system, attacking, defending, how we're going about those things.
Do we have a system?
We don't have players consistently to build a system.
But the system should be, system should be outside.
In the longest time.
Exactly. So the system should be outside of the players you select. You should have a blueprint for how you're going to play, and what each role of each person is. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen that.
But do you think we have given serious thought to our intelligence level as a footballing people? Do we put enough brain power into devising a philosophy and how we want all our national teams to play? Do you see any evidence of that? Because Neo, I gather you're a bit of a coach as well.
I haven't seen it. And why I say I haven't seen it, if you look at the Jamaica under-15 team, they play a complete different formation. Then you move to under-17, a different system. Then you move to under-20, a different system. Then you move to the senior group, a different system. I would love to see us implement a system from that age group that you learn that type of football and you move up the ranks playing the same way. No, I'm not saying the system can't change, but you have system 1, 2, or 3, depending on the opposition that we're going to play. It's a bit strange when you make an under-15 team at, say, 14 years old, and you play, let's say you play 5 at the back. Then you move up to under-17, all of a sudden you're playing the only sweeper, you're now 3 at the back. Then you have to learn that. You're back into school where school is playing, where you are the forward for. Look at Alvas. Alvas was the goal scorer for his school.
That doesn't mean he was a forward though. He overlapped a whole lot, and because he was a key player, then he took it up on himself. But let us switch it a little bit. Here we are going into Japan to play Japan and Serbia. Do we expect to see a full-strength Japanese team coming up against us?
Yes, I would expect to see a full-strength Japan team, simply because this is an annual tournament they've had for 40 plus years. Mm-hmm. So it's something important. Kirin, the name of the competition is named after Kirin, which is the huge beer company. Mm-hmm. So it's a big thing. So I would expect them to be at full strength.
Okay. Your thoughts on that, Neo?
I'm very excited for that game. Mm-hmm. Osaka from Werder Bremen, he scored a hat-trick in Japan's last game. There's also Minamino from Southampton. I want to see him as well against our back line. I am okay with Jamaica's forward line going forward, between the midfield and going to score goals. I think we'll find that capability to score goals, so I want a full-strength team to come to my back line to see what people like Minamino, what he can bring. Swift, fast with the ball, how will our back line stand up against that?
We'll get a chance to zone in on the different teams and what they bring. But let us go to a break right now, and we'll be back shortly. Welcome back to Inside Sports. I'm Nodley Wright. So we have been looking at the matches, the friendly matches coming up on the 3rd, the 7th, and the 12th of June. Earlier, we looked at Japan. Now it's time for us to look at Serbia. Again, I'll start with you, Neo. How much do you know of the Serbian team, and what can we expect of them?
Serbia caught my eye in their second to last qualifier against Portugal, drawing 2-2 despite going a man down. So they are a team that has some resilience. Mitrovic from Fulham is their centre forward, so I'll love to see him again running out again, or a back line. That's the major thing for me. So I expect a good game from them. They are deep in their qualifiers as well, so we expect a good Serbia team, because more than likely the coach has to be looking at that moving from or along in their qualifiers, despite it being a Jamaica team who is just a friendly game, he has something to look for as well. So I expect a full strength team from that team as well.
But is it just a friendly for us though?
I think you have to ask the coach that.
Bearing in mind that the Gold Cup is coming up. But let me ask you this, Machel. How much do you think the European and the British presence in our squad, how much does that help us going against a European emerging team such as Serbia?
I think it gives us a bit more experience and maybe some more know-how versus players who are in the MLS or USL. So there's a little bit more solidity in terms of that, what they know, what they've experienced, the players they go up against, and the level of play that they're at, even in the championship. So that's what I think has been added with those additions.
All right, so let me ask you both this. Serbia plays predominantly a 3-4-3 formation, which is slightly different from Japan, which plays a 4-3-2-1. How much of an adjustment do you think we'll have to make, or do we have the personnel to adjust in order to effectively combat Serbia and then, of course, Japan?
Well, a formation is just a formation. It's based on the system that you're going to go with. Is Serbia and Japan that far apart to say that we have to try two different systems? No, I don't think so. I think that we have the personnel to really go out there and play our brand of football. I think we're...
Which is what?
That's what the coach should know. When I say our brand, I'm saying that I think the coach doesn't need to have a special game plan in two friendly matchups to say, we're going to play defensive today, we're going to go attack. He should just be, for these three set of matches, we're working on this, right? And we, despite the result, we're going to work on this to see how this works. So that's what I expect. I don't expect to see against Japan we go 4-5-1, and then against Serbia we go 5-4-1. I don't expect to see that. I expect to see what he wants. After these three games, we should see what Jamaica should be playing in the Gold Cup.
Yeah, I think Whitmore has been fairly consistent with his formation since he's taken back the job. So 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1, that's what he's done. I don't see him deviating from that, although I will say I do think we have the options to experiment with something like a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3. I do think we have those options. It might be something that would be useful in the toolbox going forward, in qualifiers, going to Mexico, going to America, etc. It might be something that's useful, but I doubt that we'll see anything like that. It'll probably be the same standard that he's been using.
All right, in terms of the squad that we have, I gather also that Shamar Nicholson has a hamstring injury. I expected that you'd have told me that, Neil. So while he's there, he could be a liability, or he may pull out. Are you aware of this?
First I'm hearing that.
Yeah.
Okay. When you need news, talk to me. But in terms of though, when we look at our selection, I know we touched on it a little bit earlier. The goalkeeping, Andre Blake is peerless, but in comes a new keeper in Dylan Barnes. How much do you know of him? And then we look at Dennis Taylor and J.D. White. What do they bring?
I know nothing of Dylan Barnes, but there's Andre Blake. But then you look at J.D. and Dennis Taylor. When last did those two goalkeepers keep? So you look at it and say, so we're carrying four goalkeepers, two who would be currently playing, and then two who haven't been doing anything. I saw Jaden the other day, and he looked like he was in some training, but as a goalkeeper, training alone can't do it. You have to have match practice day in, day out. So should something happen to Blake, like God forbid, I know he suffered an injury recently, did the surgery already, he was back in no time, but if Tapper was to turn to the bench and say, well, I know it could have been Dennis, because J.D. was the one who started last time. But then he went with Shaven Sean Paul in the American game, and then he's not in the squad this time around.
There we have it,
inconsistencies.
But that's one end of the field. Let's go to the other end of it now. We look at the forward line. Leon Bailey isn't around. Shamar Nicholson. How much will the absence of Bailey especially affect our potency?
Again, that goes to building consistency and building a team that...
Oh, and add Bobby Reed to that, because
knows,
there was that chemistry
exactly.
with Bailey and Reed.
Yeah, so again, there's an issue there in terms of the players getting to know each other, especially now that we have some new players who have come in. So they need to build a familiarity and build a bond. And that's probably the biggest part of Leon Bailey missing, that they won't be able to do that.
Because while it is clear that he is gifted, we haven't seen the best of him for us at all. He hasn't really lit up the field for us.
No.
But don't comment on that, Neo. What I want you to comment on, as far as our team is concerned, what area would you say our biggest liability is? And then you will take the other part of that. What would be our biggest asset? You first, Neo.
Our biggest liability for me has to be around the back. And why I say around the back is that, as I said, consistency. Are we going to be trying with defenders? I would have expected that at this moment in time, with World Cup qualifiers on the verge, would have known what my back line would be. I would know, okay, these are my two centre backs and I have one on the bench just in case. So far I've seen the centre back pairings change, I've seen the wing backs change. In the last 4 friendlies, they have all changed. It hasn't been consistent. So that is where, as I mentioned before, teams coming at us. I love the USA game with Pulisic coming at the back line, seeing where our weaknesses are. And that is what we have to look at. Alvas and Taxi loves to overlap. Right? So what are we going to do now with a back line, with a weakened pair of centre-backs? How do we fix that? How do we solidify that?
We do have a weakened pair of centre-backs.
Who are our centre-backs? Can you name them?
Maybe Liam Moore, Ethan Pinnock, maybe
Who have played
Curtis
with Jamaica
Jones.
once.
Yeah, but football
So
is a universal language.
A centre-back pair is something that has to, I have to know what my left centre-back's weakness is. I have to know, okay, that ball coming over the right, he cannot head that. I have to go for that. We don't have that at the moment.
But let me ask you this. Against Saudi Arabia, did we not go with the familiar centre-back pairing? Did we not?
We did. But
and what happened?
We also had a left back who was straying a lot, who made some mistakes. The 2 goals came from Taxi's side.
You mean the same Taxi who has over 60 caps, the very experienced?
But then I ask you, where is Taxi's challenge? Where is the challenge coming from?
Well, we now have Greg Lay and we now have Amari Bell. But hold on.
For many years he's been comfortable.
Your argument was, or your position was, consistency and people with experience. You just defeated your argument.
Not really.
Oh, you didn't?
Because I'm leaving the backs. I'm leaving the wings. Because I know Taxi and Alvas will be going down. So I need 2 people here to protect Andre at all times. And I'm not seeing that.
Okay.
So if a centre-back is there who knows that he's going to go, Taxi's going to go, and that comes back to the system. I think going forward, we have a good system going forward. We have goal scorers there.
One more quick thing. For years, we've been crying out for a defensive midfielder.
It's not Hector. I don't know why they keep trying Hector. It's not Hector.
I wasn't pinpointing anyone, but I was saying that is an area of weakness. Where do we find someone to fit that?
I think he could be in the team.
Where?
He could be there.
Okay.
He could be there.
I think at this point we're probably moving ahead without a set defensive midfielder.
It's not Hector.
Because.
Do you agree it's not Hector?
He's not going there with you.
Yeah. I have different views on Hector. But in terms of weakness, I want to go back to the goalkeeping because there's a big drop off from Andre Blake to Amal Knight or Jadine White.
Well, Amal isn't around. Jadine.
But there's a huge drop off there. We have the new keeper coming in, Curtis Dillon.
No, Dylan Barnes.
Dylan Barnes. He has played 9 games in the past year. He's been loaned out twice from his club to Scotland and to League One. He's played 9 games and conceded 13 goals. So that's a bit worrisome for me. So I don't know if he can plug that gap that is between Andre Blake and everybody else.
But there's another who could come. A goalkeeper, Lawrence Vigouroux, who kept under 21 for Chile. His mother is Jamaican. I think he's looking about passport as well. There's also another Jamal Blackman who's on the books of Chelsea.
I'll take Dwayne Miller.
Okay. Assets, Michelle, what are our assets?
I think our biggest strength is on the wings. in the wide channels, both of them, in terms of the wing backs and wingers. We have a lot of wingers to choose from who can do different things. So I think those should be our areas of focus. You say you're not worried about us going forward. I am somewhat, because I don't see any patterns of play. How are we getting forward? How are we trying to isolate a winger? Are we trying to interplay on one side and then make a big switch and get a 1v1? Because that's something that would benefit someone like Leon Bailey. Get him 1v1 against the outside back and we go from there. But I don't see any cohesive idea of what we're trying to do going forward.
Can't disagree with you, but I'm going to ask you some hard questions now. How will we do in those 3 games? Japan's senior team, win, lose, draw, Serbia, and the under 23. Putting you on the spot.
Me first?
Yes, of course.
I think out of the 3 games we'll lose 1.
Which one will we lose?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure which one we lose, but I think we'll lose 1. But I expect us to score in every game. So as I said, our strength for me is going forward, because in our last couple of games we have scored. We have found the back of the net, but we've also conceded too many goals. So I do expect us to score. To concede, it depends on the team that's out there, who we're playing against. As I said, I think we'll win 1, lose 1.
And draw 1.
I think we'll draw 1.
Oh, right.
We're going to draw against the under 23 team.
Your typical fence.
We're going to draw against the under 23 team.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because if I work with the logics of Marcel, it's going to be that game that
we're going to experiment.
We're going to experiment. So I expect us to draw. But if we win the first game, then Tapa might say, let's go and just experiment in the second one.
Okay.
So,
Marcel?
I think I will take I think we'll go down against Japan. They're just too disciplined and coordinated, I think, from watching them. Us playing out of the back is going to be a problem against them, because they press high. That's how they create most of their chances. They win the ball early and go from there. So Japan, I think, will take a loss. Serbia, we should score. They've conceded in their last 3 World Cup qualifiers. They concede in most games that they play, even though they win. They concede, so we should score. I think we can get the best of them, at minimum a draw, but we'll score. The under 23 game, no idea. I don't know what that game will be used for. I think it will be used to experiment, but it might not be. So I can't call that one. Let me call it a draw.
So do you really think we have the discipline, though, to take on Serbia and do what is required to beat them? Because you have given up on Japan, but are we disciplined and tough enough to take on Serbia and beat them?
I think they'll give us opportunities. That is what I know. They've conceded a lot for a team that's big and has 3 central defenders. They conceded a lot of crosses, goals from crosses. The 2 goals against Portugal were crosses. So that's something that they do. And yeah, defending against them might be a problem with someone like Dusan Tadic pulling the strings. 14 goals and 17 assists in the Eredivisie for Ajax this season. So that's going to be a huge ask. But if we score, I think we'll get some confidence from that.
All right, fair enough. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode of Inside Sports. Our guests were Nia Oxford and Machel Turner. We sincerely wish the Reggae Boys all the best in our upcoming games. This has been Inside Sports. Thanks for watching.